Poople's Cat. Hopefully this video will have more light on it. One of the things I wanted to talk about in this channel is environmental impacts and threats to humanity and the planet by our use of the planet. And one of the things that isn't true, which I believed was true, but I looked it up, is the whole issue of rare earth and metal removal from the planet. We use vast quantities of rare earth and minerals and metals. But one of the things that a lot of people on the left and people believe in ecology will tell you is that we're going to run out, and we're going to run out soon. And hello, Mr. Bear. And you can actually see that in some of the slides coming up. But it's not actually true. When I looked into it, it's not true. We're not going to run out in the near term or the medium term of rare earth and metals. So one of the things I did was I looked at mining journals, and this one is called Mined into Extinction. Is the world running out of critical minerals? By Mining Technology magazine. So logically, we would say we are running out of stuff. Logically, we would say that the almost doubling, tripling every decade of use of certain materials would inevitably cause those materials to become extinct or unavailable. It makes logical sense, but it's a logical fallacy, and I'm going to explain why. Of all the minerals mined over the centuries, have any been forgotten or mined into extinction? And more importantly, is mankind, humankind, in danger of running out of critical resources? So this guy, Julian Turner, talked to Dr. Lawrence Meinhardt, Deputy Association Director for Energy and Minerals at the US Geological Survey. The issue would be, have they? Yes, I can think of one. Beryllium. Beryllium was used in cardiac arrhythmias, and around about the early 1990s, we completely ran out of it. And we didn't have any anymore, and we had to use other stuff. So that's one right there that's not covered in this article. They talk about 1987 and a place in Greenland where it had the only mineable resource of a mineral called cryolite, and cryolite had been discovered in 1798. Cryolite was important for aluminium smelting and a few other things, and basically by 1987 the mine just ran out of usable cryolite, and the world moved on. And Meinhardt points out that in the Stone Age, flint was extremely valuable, and but currently the obvious need for flint arrowheads has diminished, so the mining of flint has effectively stopped. The world did not run out of flint, it just became less enticing to actually extract it economically. It talks about the Romans prizing salt very highly, which is very true. And obviously any loss of technological society, salt would become extremely valuable again. Hopefully not flint, but it might. So he says basically the centrality of salt to the world's economy is now much less than it was in the past. Okay, so the argument seems to be we run out, or it becomes economically unviable to mine, we just move on to something else. Okay, but at some point logic would say we're going to run out of everything. Now, he says that metals, iron, copper and aluminium have skyrocketed, especially in the recent past. And he says rare earth elements are much more important in 2018 than they ever were, even 30 years ago. And that's definitely true. Wind turbines, cell phones, hybrid car batteries, all of that sort of stuff require tiny amounts of rare earth metals. So he points out that lithium is now in huge demand because of the electrical car fleet, not just for mental illness. And one of the interesting things is reserves versus resources. He says that it's very important to understand that neither reserves nor resources are the same as all there is. He says you don't just run out of minerals. He says the world reserves of almost all commodities are greater now than they were 50 to 100 years ago, even though large amounts are being produced. That's true. We're using vastly more. So the amount of annual use to the amount of reserves has probably fallen. which should worry people to some degree. Obviously, this article is trying to tell you not to. So in terms of reserves versus whatever, I found from a different site, reserves are an engineered number that are based on economic viability. Technically speaking, there are small concentrations of gold everywhere. It's just not usually viable to mine low concentrations. When we, quote, run out of each mineral in the chart that's at the end, will be based on its current reserves and prices. If the price doubles, then suddenly it will become more economic to find more. Reasonably true. It points out that to find and develop economic use of a rare earth mineral deposit takes from exploration to discovery to actual mining of the rare earth takes between 10 to 15 years. And only 10% of early exploration for rare earth minerals actually finds currently economically viable deposits, which I think is fun. So China produces more than 90% of all the current used rare earth metal and mineral production. China recently claimed that their supplies of dysprosium, neodymium and lanthanum, which are very useful for a lot of different things, nuclear weapons and laptops, could be exhausted within 20 years. This upset people and caused the commodity market to panic. Now, Minehart, unsurprisingly, does not share Chinese government's pessimism. What the Chinese government's doing with their pessimism is they're buying up all the supply of rare earth minerals wherever they can find them, which I think is interesting. So the critical rare earth minerals are important. Now, China says it'll run out in 20 years. So it says they have 20 decades worth of stored stuff that they haven't mined yet or produced yet. Now, if they are starting to run out, then they'll probably increase drilling and they'll probably find more. It's kind of his argument. He uses the example of zinc. Zinc, in 1950, the United States Geological Survey estimated reserves of zinc at 77 million tons, metric tons. In 2000, they announced the reserves were up to 209 million metric tons. Copper and everything else is explained as similar increases. It goes back to mention cryolite still exists. It's in museums and you can go and find it at the old mine site. It's just not worth mining anymore, but if he says claims if it was, then it would be good. Now, the main thrust of this, I think, is kind of important. I'm going to hold that for a couple of minutes just to throw some interesting facts to everybody. 60 to 64 separate elements from the periodic table are actually in almost every single mobile phone, and usually minute amounts, but they're really, really important. So we can lose some rare earth elements and we can still use mobile phones and laptops and digital cameras, but they'll run a lot slower than we're used to or we would like. He points out the Japanese call rare earth metals the seeds of technology, and in a large degree that's true. When this other study by Gradle looked at this, he said the best substitutes for 92 of these rare earth metals, he found that 12 of them had absolutely no substitutes they could find whatsoever. And none of the 62 metals would actually have a substitute that covered all their current uses. So what we use and how we use it is going to be kind of critical. So we're not going to, in 20 years from now, just suddenly run out of most of the rare earth metals. But what is probable, based upon current evolution and economics, terminal decline. Now, terminal decline suggests an irreversible change that ends in zero. Now, that's not happened for any of the 90 plus commodities currently tracked by the United States Geological Survey. But in addition to supply disruption, because the supplies could fall, there could be disruption, but their argument is we'll find alternatives or we'll find more that's now becoming economically viable, is the question of import dependence. And I think import dependence is the critical factor here for preppers and for anybody interested in the economics of the world that they live in. According to the 2017 Mineral Commodity Summary, the United States of America is now 100% reliant on foreign sources for 20 different mineral commodities and imports the majority of its needs for more than 50 separate commodities. Thus, supply disruption is likely to be more immediate consideration, supply exhaustion, or running out of a particular mineral source. So yeah, well, the left have said that we're going to run out of these materials like lithium and certain types of iron, indium and a few stuff like that, and that the entire site will then collapse. That's highly unlikely. I kind of agree with the Mineral Survey. I think we'll find different substitutes, and I think we'll find economic viability to harvest and collect different types of them. We will also become more economic at recycling some of these minerals, though it's hard to recycle some. And the article that I'll link does give an example of silver for that. But the idea of an interconnected world is that China won't just stop selling Canada and America rare earth metals, because China will need our stuff for its own economy. The danger here is if China or America or Russia or India develop enough of its own economics that they want all of the rare earth metals that they've got, and at the same time don't feel any particular severe need to keep the economies of the other countries who are dependent on their exports afloat. A classic example of this is Japan. In 1941, Japan got in a lot of trouble for attacking America without declaring war. However, one could argue America had undeclared war several years before when it decided that Japan could no longer have oil unless Japan pulled out of its war with China. Japan, probably rightly so, looked at that as an undeclared economic war and attacked militarily to try and get access to oil supply in Burma, and which it did quite successfully for a time and then got destroyed. So the rights and wrongs of the Japanese-American War are neither here nor there. What is important and instructive from that is, I think, for myself, unlike Germany, I think you can argue very strongly that the Japanese-Pacific War of 1941 to 1942 was almost entirely caused by economic need, by economic shortfall. The have nations decided it didn't like the politics of the have-not nation and shut the door. When the door was shut, the have-not nation, Japan, did not take that well. And I think that's an important lesson for us all. Follow commodity prices. If you see oil and gasoline and liquid petroleum starting to spike, anticipate a shortage and maybe store up yourself. If you see wheat futures and rice futures skyrocketing, go out, buy up a load of stocks of that, because there is a chance that supply will be crushed. And you can say that for any particular commodity you might want to look at. Now that's all from me. Hopefully you're enjoying the new microphone. I am. And hopefully the camera will be a little bit more clearer than it was for Poor Uncle Al's video. Au revoir, and worry about things that you need to worry about. Don't worry about things people tell you to worry about. Au revoir.
If there's a goal that everyone remembers, it was back in old 72. We all squeezed the stick and we all pulled the trigger.